Hey guys, welcome back to the show. It's your host, Stewart Kraintz, and I am here with an amazing friend of mine. This individual is somebody that has inspired me time and time again to step all the way into my own power, my own greatness, learn how to take up a space and come from a place of service, being able to share my gifts with the world. And I had to have him on the show because I know that he can help you in any walk of life in terms of bringing your whole self to whatever venue you find yourself in. So I'm going to introduce you all to Brenden Kumarasamy. Thank you for being here today, Brenden.
Stu, the pleasure is absolutely mine. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And for those of y'all that might not be familiar with Brenden, he is the founder and host of Master Talk, which is an amazing YouTube channel. Always some amazing takeaways on how to be the best possible public speaker that you can be. But Brenden, one of the first things that, you know, caught me by surprise is just how full of life you are. Every time you enter a room, it doesn't matter if we're in a small gathering of like 12 people or if we're in a big auditorium or even if we're on a field somewhere, you are the biggest shining light in any particular space that you find yourself in. And so want to kick it over to you and just hear a bit more about how you got so into and passionate about public speaking and how you learned how to create presence for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful questions, too. So for me, the story started when I was in college. I went to business school and I did these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for
Mm-hmm.
nerds. So while other guys my age were playing baseball, or like you, actually, you're a great example of that, basketball or some other sport, I wasn't one of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
I did presentations competitively. That's how I learned how to speak. But the goal was never to be a coach or a YouTuber or an entrepreneur, right? The goal for me was to get a great job. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I did. But in that journey, as I was maturing in these case competitions, too, I started coaching a lot of the students on how to speak. Not because I was any good, it's because the alternative they had was a pile of rocks, so they just went with me. And that's how I learned how to speak. So I accidentally got really good at coaching people on how to communicate. And that's what led to the YouTube channel where I started to make videos on communication because I felt that a lot of the information that was out there wasn't really good in the free category. That's
Mm-hmm.
one piece. And then the other piece to your question around presence, I would say for me, one philosophy I have that you don't really see me do that much because you've really only see me in settings where everyone's really nice is I'm really cutthroat about who I hang around with. For
Mm.
me, presence is all about prioritizing energetic and positive people in your life. I even have a networking strategy that I call the value list where I actually rank all of the people that I meet on a list, not all of them, but let's say like the top 25 people, but I order them in generosity. That's the
Mm.
ranking system to make sure that every single time I interact with someone, they're always positive, and that re-energizes me, or else there's no way I could keep up with my energy all the time.
Wow, that's actually really fascinating. Could you expand a bit on, how you rank folks on generosity and what are some of the returns that you've seen not only for yourself but for them as well?
Yeah, for sure, Stu. You know what I always tell people, especially my go-givers in the world, like yourself, you're a great example of this,
Thank
is
you.
being generous is not enough. A lot of
Mhm.
people say that, if you're generous, you give back to the world will just give back to you. I think that's somewhat accurate. I don't think that's fully accurate. I think a better statement would be if you give to other generous people, you will achieve exponential levels of success. But there's a key part to that strategy that's really important, which is figuring out who the generous people are. Because if you put all your energy and you give to people who don't want to reciprocate or actually don't even care about your success, then it's not really good. So I call this everyone says go the extra mile for everyone. I don't agree with that. I always say go the extra meter for everyone,
Mm.
but run marathons for people who are actually out there serving people. So if
Wow.
you have that nuance, you'll be able to achieve much more. Because it seems when you talk to me that, well, Brendan's just nice to everyone. That's not true at all. So it really isn't. Especially now with I'm super grateful with the success I have, and I'm barely getting started, and there's already a lot of people asking me for stuff and things like that. You have to just have to balance that. But going back to the value list, because your question was really around how I rank it. It's not easy to do. It's more of a gut feeling. But the key point to this is I reset it every month or so. So I look at the
Hmm.
list every month and I kind of just go off a feeling. But something more practical that people can take home is what are some specific things you can write a list of the people and right next to them, what are some of the specific things that that person has done for you that's practical? Easy. Like, let's start with easy stuff for me. Sharing my YouTube channel with like one person. That's like really easy. But then there's things that are much harder. Like if somebody in my family is sick, somebody taking a flight to come see my mom, something like that. My mom's fine, but I'm just it's an example, right?
Glad to
Like
hear she's fine.
right, she's fine. She was never sick, but I don't know why I put that in the universe. But the point is that there's different levels of how to give. So when you think about that, you can really assess the accurately how someone is generous. But the key is to look at the actions.
Yeah, no, and I can definitely understand what you're saying. You want to know that what you are putting out into the world, into the universe is, hopefully at some point reciprocated towards you, but the bare minimum is being passed forward. And something I was wondering is, as you're describing, giving somebody a meter, or here in the States, a foot,
Right foot.
um, but giving somebody like giving the go givers a marathon, how can you tell the difference? Is there a situation where you can see somebody's potential and you want to give them the marathon if they aren't yet matching it by their actions?
Beautiful questions too. I love this. I'm glad we're going in this direction. So a couple of thoughts on this. So let's start with the first statement, which is go the extra meter for everyone. Go the extra meter for us doesn't seem like a lot.
Right.
But to the world, it actually means a lot. Let me give you a super simple example. Let's say I
Okay.
meet somebody random at an event. Let's call that person Stacy. So I meet Stacy at this event. And I just ask her quite simply, what are you passionate about? And she says, I'm really passionate about holistic health. Let's use this as an example.
Sure.
So going the extra meter doesn't mean okay, Stacey, let's listen to you. Bye. That's not what it means. Extra meter means, hey, Stacey, I think you would enjoy this podcast I listened to here that's about holistic health and how to build that because you mentioned one of your goals is to build a coaching business for holistic. I think that'll help you. So that's going the extra meter. It's not that much work, but to Stacey that means a lot because most people just go, okay, cool, and they walk away. They don't actually try to help that person, even
Sure.
in a tiny way. But if you plant small seeds in everybody like that, which is very easy to do, especially if you're already really generous, and you've seen me actually do that a lot, where I'm actually planting little seeds in everybody, then you kind of figure, and by the way, that's just goodwill, right? That's just
Of
goodwill to the
course.
universe. We don't have expectation that this will come back to us. But 5% of the time, 3% of the time, even 10% of the time, you'll watch that person light up, but also go, what are you passionate about? What do you really care about in the world? And that's when they get leveled up in your mind. So then when that level up happens, usually for me, everyone's got their own style. Then I start pouring in an avalanche of value into that person. I'll give you an example with us. I mean, 3 years ago, you didn't like give me $1 million or anything you never needed to. But you just sat there for 45 minutes and you really got to know who I was, even before Masterhawk was an idea. And that was more than enough for me to pour an avalanche into you, right? Or try my best to. And that attempt is enough because most people won't even do that for you. So that would be
Hmm.
my thoughts. But feel free to follow up on that if that's not clear.
No, I mean that makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm just hearing you say like go givers get more in the end. Like we have our friendship, we have our relationship. I continue to learn from you every time I see one of your YouTube videos, and it's all because I chose to connect with you at an event 3 years ago, and continue to follow up a little bit periodically. Something that came up for me, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners will kind of wonder about this as well, because this has been something on my mind throughout my journey of personal growth. So you're pretty clear, Brenden, about giving value, being the go giver, basically giving with no expectation of return, just hoping that the person's going to continue to put good out into the world. Is that correct?
Right. The only thing I would change slightly is yes, I'll give value to everybody that I meet to a certain level, but the people I generally pour into, I'm pretty confident that they'll either pay it forward to me or to the world, or better to both,
Hmm.
for sure.
So, so thank you for clarifying. And I think what people often struggle with is you're giving your value, and through Master Talk, it's you're giving public speaking tips, giving tips on how to have a bigger presence, like how to light up a room, light up a party, whatever the situation may be. A lot of folks feel some type of way about charging financially or expecting any type of return for giving something away like that. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how to, I guess, shift someone's mindset into understanding that they can charge for the value that they do put out into the world.
100% Stu. Great question. So it will really depend on the type of business that you're in, but let me make this super clear for people. This is something one of my mentors told me once that I thought was really fascinating. Is that information should be free, but implementation should be the fee. So what does that
Mm,
mean? So when we think about Master Talk, especially for me, I'm a bit different than most business owners because I never got into business for the sake of it. Like I actually never started a business. It happened accidentally where I was just making videos. Even when you met me last time a few years ago, I was just making videos for fun. It was never about monetizing it. It was only after our discussion and talking to a lot of people that I realized I could build a coaching business in the back end. So for me, the mission is still the same, and it'll always be, which is how do I democratize communication knowledge for people who can never afford a communication coach, especially someone at the level that I'm at today. So somebody like in India or Cambodia or in some parts of Africa, right? I
sure.
want those people to have access to me in some way, shape, or form, and that looks like information for most people. But then there's a small facet of that group who want more from you. And more could mean different things. And that'll be a balance between, right, what you actually want to serve the audience with. Because that could be a product, that could be a service, that could be a Mr. Beast burger, it doesn't matter. Or it could be like a coaching package. You have to figure that out.
Hmm.
That is both something that that small minority wants more for, and then the other piece that you're willing to serve them with. So example. So in my case, I make my money off of 50 to 100 people. That's how I pay my bills. Even if, maybe tens of thousands of people might be watching my content or thousands of people might be watching my content. It's a small group of people that want private access to me, that want me to hold their hand and get them the result myself with my skin in the game. Those people pay me for my time. But that's a very small community. It's probably 1% of my audience, maybe even
Sure.
less. But then that 1% allows me to contribute to the other 99. But here's the punchline, Stu. That 1% is happy to pay me for that service because there's a value add for them, which is I don't want to watch these videos. Yeah, Brendan's videos are cool, but I don't want to spend a year. I'm a executive at a company making $300,000 a year. I don't care about this. I'd rather just spend a few thousand on Brendan, even if his videos are fine, and just have him teach me all of this himself. And that's the value. So going back to your question, we need to just figure out first that regardless of whether someone can afford us or not, they're still a customer. Except the way they're a customer can be different. I consider you a customer, Stu. Even if you've never given me a dollar, you're a customer because you're contributing value to who I am and my mission in ways that has nothing to do with money, but rather advocating for me. So everyone is a customer. We want to serve everyone and abundantly, openly, but then a percentage of those people will want more from you, and you just need to figure out what's within integrity for you that you want to charge many with, that you believe at a fundamental level is worth more. That's why I don't sell online courses, Stu. I don't believe in it.
Hmm.
That's why I only sell access to me, because I believe the money that they're spending on me is worth way less than the value that they're actually getting. So the value exceeds the money.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think the nugget, I've never heard it said this way, so I actually just want to repeat it for anybody listening. Information should be free, implementation is the fee. And I'll just give you some snaps for that. So, I guess one other thing that I've kind of heard you mention over and over again is you have the platform that you've built in Master Talk. You are giving away as much free value as you possibly can to serve as many people as you can. And for the few that can't afford you and want to work with you one-on-one or maybe in a group setting, there are, basically some paid options to work with you. What is for maybe any other entrepreneurs listening, what is the advice you would give around some of the scarcity that either I can't charge for this or who am I to charge to work with me? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So everyone's got their own opinions on this. Here's my personal one, especially in a service-based business. Obviously, product-based business is a different piece of advice. But I would say for service-based, brother, for me it always starts with just do it for free until you feel that you can charge for it. I started that way. The first 3 years from 19 to 22, those 70 people I saw in university, I never charged them anything. I just loved coaching. I never knew you could charge money for it. I just did it because I loved it, right? But eventually, as you start to get people results, you start to graduate out of that mode. But the problem with most people is they're not in movement still. They don't actually get started, especially in the coaching business or really in any service-based business. They get stuck on price instead of going, why don't you just help people for the sake of helping people? Because at the end of the day, right, business is a long game, Stu. It's a long journey. We're not just coaching people or doing marketing agency services for 3 months and going, okay, we're done. Let's sing Kumbaya and we're done. This is a long marathon. So if we're going to be in it for 10, 15 years, we might as well enjoy it. How about we even start by coaching somebody for free for our own sake? To just say, do we even like this? Do we even want to do this? Do I want to bother to even charge people for it? And then, as we develop our competence over time, then we'll start to feel even really good. Even product-based businesses, you don't have to sell your cupcakes right away for money. Just make one, make two. See if you even like. Does it even bring you joy to make cupcakes for other people? You don't even have to charge people. Do even people like it?
I love that.
Offer them a sample. And what this does is it creates confidence. My first coaching client, I charged them $100 an hour because I didn't even know you could charge people. They just said, hey, can you coach me? I said, sure. And they said, how much do you charge? And I said, what do you mean? I literally said, what do you mean? He said, no, yeah, I'm ready to pay you. I'm ready to invest. And I said, $100 an hour for 5 sessions? He said, done. And he sent me $500. And I was like, whoa, you can like charge money for this. And I wasn't confident. I was like, why is he paying $500? I felt so bad. That was actually after we first met. That's how I got my first client at that event, randomly.
That's amazing.
That was random.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, super random. and I felt so bad. And he's actually became my greatest teacher. He said, you know why that was the best $500 I ever spent, Brenden? And I asked him why. Because I was coaching a bunch of random things like life and communication. I was all over the place. And he said, because you listen to hundreds of hours of podcasts, and that's a waste of my time. I'd rather pay you a $500 and get all that information in 1 hour. And that's when he taught me the value of paying for something, is when you pay for something, money speeds up time. And that guy went on, obviously, I'm not going to take full credit to this. That dude went on to like build a multi-7-figure real estate holding company. And even credits me to that success. And all I did was remove like a few negative friends out of his life and yelled at him for a few sessions. And that's when I realized that he never would have done that if he never hired me. And that's when my confidence skyrocketed from there.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And what I love, kind of the theme that I'm just hearing you keep coming back to, is giving and giving and giving, and kind of just trusting that it's all going to work out to some effect. And so you just shared a beautiful story about how you gain more confidence in your business, what you're doing, the impact you're having. What would be some suggestions you would have for somebody who is just getting started in business or has any type of big goal, and they're not certain either what their vision is, what their passion is, or even what the value is that they bring?
Absolutely, Stu. Here's what I would say. And the reason I like this question is because I'm a great example of someone who never had a passion until very recently. Because I think the
Wow.
biggest problem with most of us, Stu, is especially with a lot of these self-development gurus. No offense to them, obviously, but they go like, find your passion, find your. I was like, what if you don't know what it is? What if you don't have it? Of course, for 5% of people listening, the formula is, look, you know what the passion is, you're just not taking action on it, so let me kick you in the butt. But for 95% of people, including me, that I felt, I mean, feel free to let me know what you think as well, is like they just don't know what it is. They go like,
Yeah.
what is the passion?
That was my struggle for a long time, but keep going.
Right. No, absolutely, right? So I felt no one had a better answer than this. Just find your passion. I was like, okay. So here's what I would say, Stu. There's actually a lot of parts to this. So let's start with part number one. Part number one is realize that decisions are infinitely more important than passions. So I'll repeat that one again.
Yeah.
Decisions are infinitely better than passion. I'll use my personal story as an example. When I was 12 years old, okay, a career counselor. I know it's weird for a 12-year-old kid to think like this, but anyways, hear me out. So I'm 12. I don't have a lot of money. My parents are factory workers. All I'm thinking about is how to make money, even when I was 12, because I didn't want my parents to suffer, especially my mom. So I wasn't thinking about what am I passionate about. I'm going to save the world. I couldn't give a shit about the world. Right? My goal was to ask myself a more important question, which is how do I save my family? That was the only question that was on my
Mm.
mind. So all I did was I made a decision to be an accountant. Everyone in their yearbook, they kind of ask themselves, yeah, what do I want to grow up? They go astronaut,
Yeah, yeah.
stand-up comedian. I want to be like I want to be an actor. Yeah, I want to be an accountant. Because I looked at my report card and it was an easy decision for me to make, even if I had no clue what an accountant was. Because I was a math genius and I was garbage at everything else on my report card. So I just went
Wow.
online, I looked at all the math related careers, and I chose accounting. And I never changed my mind for 7 years.
Wow.
Right? So I studied really hard, got really good grades. In high school, I was like the second highest rank in math, besides like my friend who beat me. Ooh, anyways, so I studied really hard, but I made the decision. And trust me, this all has a point. So I get to business school. I have my oversized prom suit on.
Hmm.
I have no business connections. I go to my first cocktails because people tell me that's how I get a job. And I meet all these students who are 2 years older than me that had internships at the big four accounting firms. These are
Hmm.
like the dream. If you get a job at one of
Hmm.
these firms, your life is set. KPMG, Deloitte. I didn't know what that was. I thought Price Waterhouse Coopers was a water bottling company.
What'd you
Right?
think Ernst and Young was?
Dude, man, I was like, see young people live here? Are they earnest? I don't know. It's kind of lost. So I go to these cocktails, man, and you'll see the tie-in really quickly. And I go up to these students and I go, how do you get a job? And you know what they told me, Stu? They said two words: case competitions. And I said, what's a case competition? And they went on to explain that it's this presentation circuit. You got to do well. You can press executives. And I saw that as my ticket out of poverty. So I started doing these case competitions and I landed a job at PwC at the age of 20. And I realized at that point I was going to make it. And then I got a job in IBM as a consultant, all that stuff. But then what happened is in the journey of getting those jobs, I got really good at case competitions. I got really good at speaking. I got really good at coaching people on how to speak. And I accidentally became the world's youngest communication coach. And I
Wow.
started Master Talk. So why am I telling you that story, Stu? The reason is because if I never made the decision to be an accountant at 12, I would never, this conversation wouldn't exist.
Right.
Wouldn't exist, right? I never would have went to Summit, never would have met Lewis, never would have met you. None of this would have happened. And that's the point. The mistake that everyone listening to this podcast is making right now, Stu, with their life, is they're waiting for their passion to land on their lap. They're not making decisions that are moving the ball forward. And for me, the most important decision to make for anybody listening to this podcast has nothing to do with passion, but financial security. Find what Gay Hendricks calls your zone of excellence. Your zone of genius is really difficult to find, which he defines as something you're really talented at, something you get paid to do, and something you love. That trifecta, I would argue, Stu, is really difficult to master. I wouldn't start there. I would start with, and I'm controversial in that way, start with what can you actually get paid to do that you're really good at. Start with that first and make money.
Mm.
And then when you start making money, not millions of dollars, but just enough to provide for your family and yourself, then ask yourself the deeper philosophical questions. And if you keep those questions top of mind, you'll eventually find your purpose.
For y'all that are listening, I really hope you take the opportunity to hit the rewind button a little bit, and just re-listen to what Brenden just said, because he just dropped some absolute gold in your lap if you choose to use it in your life. And I've never heard of it explained that way. The zone of excellence versus the zone of genius. And I guess with the decision, if you think of this as like a decision tree, almost like, should I go left or should I go right, or should I go straight forward? What do you personally do when you're faced with one of these big decisions that, as you just explained, could potentially shape your passions and your future?
Absolutely, man. I think, Steve Jobs says this so well, Stu, where it's really hard to connect the dots forward. It's only easy to connect the dots backward. So it's
Mm-hmm.
easy for me to tell you now, Stu, that yeah, absolutely every decision that I've made throughout my life unintentionally led me to my destiny, which is to become the greatest communication coach that ever lived, and then help the whole world and democratize, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's easy for me to kind of yap my mouth and tell you that now, but it's hard in retrospect, right? It's hard in that moment. So I
sure.
think the only right answer to your question around how do you make effective decisions, for me, it really comes down to self-awareness. But let me add more layer to that, because I don't like people who just say self-awareness. Well, what does that mean?
Of course.
Right? So there's a couple of things to self-awareness. The first thing is realizing that self-awareness, to me, and most people don't have this. That's why it's an opportunity for improvement for people listening to this. Is self-awareness I define as someone who equally understands their strengths as well as their weaknesses.
Mm.
And most people, they go like, yeah, be good at this, have your strengths here, but they don't actually think about like how what would they would be garbage at. Like I would be a terrible plumber, dude. Terrible. I have so much respect for, if I had the same game and I was really good with my hands, I would have chosen to be a plumber because I would have gotten paid way more than an accountant, and I would have optimized that way. So the lesson is not, oh, well, Brenden became an accountant, I should be an accountant. No, it's you got to figure out what you're terrible at, right? That's why for me it always comes down to we need to learn how to eliminate things. It's easier to say no to things than yes. Like think about being a pastor or being a garbage man or being a baker. There's nothing wrong with any of these three careers. But as I list them, some people on this call are going, I can't do any of these. I don't want to do any of these. And other people go, oh, maybe I could be a pastor. Oh, I'd really like to be a garbage man. It's actually not that bad. I would get paid X number. So that's the key. It's understanding what you're really good at and what you're really shit at. And that's what allows you to find that sweet spot that you can win your game in. One other piece to self-awareness that will be an atomic bomb that most people don't do is, let's use Tony Robbins here. Let's quote him a little bit. The
Okay.
quality of your life is solely determined by the quality of the questions that you dare to ask yourself about life.
Mm.
Let me spin Tony's quote. I'm a little bit more aggressive. So my version of Tony's quote is, I dare you to ask yourself a hard question about life every day for 30 days, because if you do, you'll never be the same ever again. Right.
So what are some examples of some of those hard questions?
There you go, Stu. That's what you're great at what you're doing. This is awesome. So I'm still developing this in real time, but I'll give you a flavor of this. I call them 80-20 questions. So we all know the 80-20 principle. What are the 20% of the actions that drives 80% of the result? So my version of this that I'm still developing internally, but I have a pretty good grasp on it so far, is what are the 20% of the question that a human being can ask themselves to gain 80% in one's clarity in life? That's
Wow.
that's my version of
Yeah.
it. So here's a couple of those questions to get us started, to not break people's minds too quickly here. So I'd say the first question is, what's one goal or a dream that you've secretly given up on and never told anyone about?
Whoa.
Right. Yeah. So that's one. I got that one, and I'll give credit. So I got that one from Devon Bandison.
That was
right?
straight to the throat, y'all. I hope you're listening.
Right. So that's one. And these are questions you want to keep asking yourself. Another question that I love, and it always catches people. If I gave you all the money in the world, I made you an instant billionaire. Okay, example. What would you do for the rest of your life, for time wise? Because you could buy everything. And the reason this shocks people, Stu, is they always answer travel. That's always people's default response. And I was going, okay, what are you going to do? Travel 3 years and then die? And they go, oh, no. And then it's like, then what would you do with your time? And the reason people are stuck on this question, Stu, is because we're all optimizing for an arbitrary number that somebody else put in our head, which is 65. But Steve Jobs had all the best doctors in the world and he died in his 50s. Kobe Bryant had all the money in the world and he died in his 40s. Optimizing for 65 is a bad move.
If I may just
Please.
interject here for a second,
Please, I've been
Brenden.
rambling a bit too long here.
No, I mean, I don't want you to stop. You're giving so much game away, but I actually heard this recently on another podcast, and I really wish I remember where, but an NFL great was talking about how, you know, I think he was, yeah, I remember it was actually Deion Sanders. He's currently head football coach at Jackson State University down in Mississippi. All-time great football player in his own right, NFL Hall of Famer, whole 9 yards. And it's a clip of him addressing his players, and he's saying to them, all of you want to make the NFL. It's all you've dreamed about. You want to make the NFL. You want to win the Super Bowl. You probably think about the money. You probably think about the women. You probably think about the house, the cars, whole 9 yards. Most of you, if you do make the NFL, will be retired by age 25, 26, because the average NFL career is about 3 or 4 years if you're lucky. What are you going to do, assuming you live to 75? You got double your accrued life to that point, 25 years. You got double that length of time ahead of you. What's next? And I just think I wanted to bring that up because it's like the same thing you're saying, just a different angle. And I hope that landed for some people just to really help drive Brendan's point home. Like, how often are we, just looking at an arbitrary number? And, if you want to have $1 million in your bank account, why? Is that something your dad wanted for you? Is that something society told you needed? Or is that just something that actually has a real value and a real goal behind it because of what your actual vision is for your life? And so, like, I know I just jumped in there, brother, but like I had to get in there too. You got me all fired up and ready to go. I'm wondering maybe what's one or two other examples of some of those 80-20 questions that you would ask yourself or some of your own clients.
I love that share, Stu. You do jump in anytime. That was so good. I love that because you're so right. It's a great analogy that explains the information in a different lens, which is okay. You got your whole life in front of you, kind of like Olympian athletes, right? You how do you replace 10,000 people screaming your name?
Mm-hmm.
And that's true for all of us,
Mm-hmm.
not just Olympian athletes, not just professional people. Is that we're always optimizing for an end, but we don't actually realize that, hey, if we had that time right now, what would we do with it instead? Because if we had an answer to that question, why don't we just do that instead right now? Because nothing's guaranteed at the end of the life. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So let's just recap everything we got so far. So one is, what's a goal or a dream that you secretly gave up on and never told anyone about? That's one from Devon
Oh,
Bandison. Right.
hits me every time you say it.
Good.
keep going, man.
Yeah. He like said it as a statement, and then I said that should be a question. That I kind of turned it into a question. So that's one. The second one is, if you had all the money in the world, how would you spend your time? And that gets you really crystal clear about what are some pieces that you're going to be working on. Number three is, if you could only accomplish 3 things in your life, and only 3 things, nothing else, nothing more, what would you want to accomplish and why? So if you
Wow.
answer questions like this, and that's I call that the focus question. It kind of focuses you in and what you actually want to do. But if you do that every day for just 30 minutes, the level of clarity that you'll have. I'll give you two other ones. I don't want to make mind break your audience too much. But obviously the fourth one, that's a common one that we know from many experts, writing your funeral speech, right? If you had
Yeah.
if someone was saying your eulogy, what would they want you to say about you? And then the other one I had, but I just slipped on it. So anyways, we'll come back to it later if I come up with it.
Hey, even if you don't remember it, man, like those four questions, everybody, that Brenden just outlined for us, you owe it to yourself to hit the pause button, rewind this thing maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, and journal on all of these straight up. Like there's nothing stopping you from taking advantage of basically the free coaching Brenden's giving us here in this conversation. I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure my fiance does it, and probably is going to be some homework for some of my clients as well.
I love it.
moving forward.
You actually did something really smart there. You bought me some time to figure out the fifth one, so I got it. So the
Okay.
fifth one is to journal the last year of your life. I got that from my business partner and coach, Vamsi.
Wow.
So let's say it doesn't matter what the year is. You could be 107, it could be 67. You pick the number. What do you want? Journal that last year. What do you want that last year to actually look like and feel like? And it brings a whole level of clarity. But the reason I've been successful, because just so people knows Will, I know you know this, but I'm only 26 years old,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now the natural piece becomes, how do I know all of this? And the advice I have for people is, I've just done this question thing thousands and thousands and thousands of times. So because I've answered so many of these questions, I'm not smarter than anyone. I'm more special. I just have more self awareness about what the point of life is. And that allows me, to your initial question, to make better decisions that make sense to me and what I'm trying to do in life. It's just most people just don't have that level of clarity for themselves. And that's why they lose.
Yeah, and thank you for kind of tying that bow on that one right there, Brenden. And for those of you that just aged yourselves and just played that comparison game, because Brenden just shared with us that he's 26 years old, I want you to know I was a hot mess at 26 myself. Like, don't shut yourself down just because somebody who may be younger than you, probably is younger than you, is showing up in a certain way and providing value. And I hope that this is two reminders. One, you can learn from absolutely anybody, from any walk of life, any background, any ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, does not matter. As long as you choose to be a student of life, you absolutely can forward yourself and your vision for your life by being a student. And then the other part, everybody, is that we are all on our own journey. you know there are people that go back to school in their 40s, 50s, 60s and finally get that college degree, or they finally lose the weight, or they finally ask that person out. And just remember, you are always first and foremost competing with yourself. And as long as you are choosing to become a better version of yourself than who you were previously, you're winning the game. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, man. Love that.
So I know we've been talking for a little bit here, Brenden, and I want to just switch gears slightly. This has been an absolutely powerful interview. Again, super appreciate you for coming on, brother. So knowing that you have your platform with Master Talk, you do the coaching and consulting that you do for, the people that you work with. What would you say, maybe in one or two sentences, is the impact that you want to have on the world?
Man, I wish I had one or two sentences. I have to take a 1 or 2 minutes if that's okay.
Yeah, whatever you actually need.
For
Go for it.
sure, for sure, brother. So I'll tell you a quick story, Stu. I think this summarizes the impact I want to create in the world pretty simply. So I was watching a TikTok the other day,
Mm-hmm.
and the TikTok featured Taylor Swift, and it's 2014. And she's on this stage, as we all know, Taylor Swift's the musician, and she wins an award called Women of the Year. It's by a
Nice.
company named Billboard, that music company.
Mm-hmm.
And she looks at the audience in her winning speech, and she says, "Your future Woman of the Year is 11 years old right now. She's sitting in a choir, learning how to sing, and she has big dreams to be a singer someday. And we need to take care of her." And then
Mhm.
what happens is the TikTok flips. And it's like 5 or 7 years later. And Billie Eilish becomes the youngest inductee in Billboard's history to win Woman of the Year. Like 17. She's barely a woman. And
Wow.
then she gets up on that stage. She's got her big bulky jacket, her big bulky glasses. She looks at the crowd and goes, "What's up, guys? Like, I know I won this thing. Like, super excited to be here." She's like rambling and rambling. And the last 30 seconds of her speech, Stu, completely changes my life. She looks at the crowd and says, like when I was watching Taylor Swift's speech in like 2014, I was 11 years old.
Mm.
And I was in choir and I was learning how to sing, and all of you took care of me. So thank you, Billboard. And then she walks off the stage. And the reason that story will forever be etched into the impact I want to create in the world, Stu, is because I thought about the next Elon Musk. Because when Elon Musk was 13 years old and he was some kid in South Africa and he was being abused by his dad, nobody knew who he was. Nobody
Sure.
sat him down for 45 minutes and said, "Hey, kid, you're going to be a genius. You are a genius. Somebody should probably help with their communication. Let me just help you for free. Let me just get all those filler words out." Did he still become the success he is today? Absolutely. Would he have had an easier life if he was better at communication? I think so,
Mhm.
personally. But I thought about the more pressing things, too, which is who's the next Elon Musk? And the answer is we don't know. We don't know who the next Elon is.
Facts.
Might be a 7-year-old girl in Cambodia. Might be a 12-year-old girl in Laos. Might be a 15-year-old boy in Utah and Salt Lake City. We have no
Sure.
idea. But what I do know is chances are they probably can't afford a communication coach. And when I realized I was the only human being who thought that way that I knew of, I realized I need to do something about it. So what's my mission? My mission is to become the best communication coach in the world. Not for me, somewhat for me, but mostly to empower every genius that will ever live throughout the history of time to be an exceptional communicator. Because if they were all exceptional at speaking, the whole world would advance at lightning speed. Yeah, a lot better than last time, eh? When we first met, I was just like, "Yeah, I'm in my basement, I'm making videos." Now it's a little bit better.
But it's one foot in front of another, right? Like you got to where you are now because of taking the little actions over and over again, making those decisions over and over again that set you up to be in this place where you are building the platform you have. You are reaching people all around the globe. And who knows, maybe you are inspiring somebody in Ghana or somebody in Suriname or somebody, you know, on their way to school in China. And it's just because of the go-giver mentality that you're bringing and that you have absolutely brought on this call. And I greatly appreciate you for that. And for those of you listening, I hope that you have been taking notes. If not, please re-listen to this interview and take some notes. Share it with anybody that you think deserves to get this information as well. And Brenden, before we go, I want to make sure these folks have the opportunity to connect with you. So, where are the best places for them to, chat you up, follow your material? What are the best places for them to find you?
Absolutely, Stu. Two ways to keep in touch. Thanks for having me on the show, man. The first
Of
one is
course.
definitely the YouTube channel. You just go to Master Talk, you'll have access to hundreds of free videos on how to speak for free. And the second one is I do a free workshop every 2 weeks over Zoom. So if you want to jump in on that, it's fun, it's live, it's interactive. Just go to rockstarcommunicator.com.
And we'll be sure to include links to both his YouTube channel and Rockstar Communicator in the show notes so that you guys can find Brenden yourselves, and hopefully he can begin touching your lives as well and helping you create the impact that you want in your life moving forward. So Brenden, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. See you soon.
The honor was mine, man.